The universe had a way of humbling civilizations that thought they understood it. For 3,000 years, the galactic confluence had maintained order among 47 species spread across two spiral arms of the Milky Way. Trade flowed like cosmic rivers between star systems. Diplomatic accords were signed in languages that sang rather than spoke. Peace, fragile, carefully negotiated peace, had become the norm. But peace, the confluence had learned, was a luxury that required constant vigilance. High Chancellor Nuthkari stood before the crystalline viewing dome of the confluence's primary station, her 6 eyes reflecting the swirling nebula beyond. Her species, the Velethan, had evolved from predators on a world where survival meant reading the intentions of every living thing within a dozen kilometers. Now those same instincts screamed warnings that her rational mind struggled to decode. "The probe data is concerning," whispered her aide, Commander Zithito, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked urgent communication among their kind. "The third planet in the Sol system shows signs of rapid technological advancement, faster than our models predicted." Nuthkari's primary eyes remained fixed on the stars while her secondary pair focused on the holographic display materializing beside her. Earth hung in miniature splendor: blue oceans, white clouds, green continents, beautiful, deceptively peaceful. "How rapid?" she asked, though her instincts already provided an answer she didn't want to hear. "They've achieved nuclear fusion, quantum computing, preliminary faster-than-light communication attempts, all within the span of a single planetary rotation around their star." A chill ran through Nuthkari's elongated spine. In galactic confluence terms, what the humans had accomplished was impossible. Most species required centuries to bridge the gap between nuclear fission and fusion. The cognitive leap from classical computing to quantum mechanics typically took millennia. And faster-than-light communication, that was a milestone that separated truly advanced civilizations from those still crawling through their cosmic infancy. "Perhaps our models are flawed," Zathiel suggested, his voice carrying hope like a prayer. But Nuthkari knew better. Her species hadn't survived as apex predators by ignoring data that contradicted their comfortable assumptions. "Show me their planet's history." The hologram expanded, displaying geological and atmospheric readings spanning the last 50,000 years. What Nuthkari saw defied every principle of evolutionary biology in the confluence's extensive databases. Earth was a nightmare. Ice ages that should have destroyed civilizations had somehow forged them stronger. Volcanic eruptions that should have rendered continents uninhabitable had become fertile ground for unprecedented biodiversity. Asteroid impacts that should have meant extinction had triggered evolutionary leaps that boggled the mind. And the humans' dear cosmic void. The humans had not merely survived these catastrophes. They had thrived in them. "Class 12 Gravity World," Zathiel read from the data stream, his voice growing smaller with each revelation. "Atmospheric pressure 2.3 times the galactic standard. Oxygen concentration lethal to most known species. Predator-to-prey ratios that should collapse any ecosystem. And the weather patterns? The weather patterns were what truly horrified them. Hurricanes with wind speeds that could tear apart starships. Tornadoes that generated electromagnetic fields strong enough to disable electronics. Lightning storms that produced energy outputs rivaling small nuclear reactors. And they had learned to predict these phenomena, harness them, even derive recreation from them. They surf massive waves created by underwater earthquakes. Zathiel whispered, reading from a cultural analysis file. They climb mountains in conditions that would kill most species within minutes. They voluntarily jump from aircraft for entertainment. Nuthkari's secondary eyes closed in what her species recognized as profound distress. She had encountered dangerous civilizations before, the Krenthi with their hive-mind aggression, the Yolan with their cybernetic enhancements, the Morthak with their reality-warping technologies. But those species had become dangerous through technology, through evolution, through cosmic accident. Humans had become dangerous through sheer, incomprehensible stubbornness. "What does the Anthropological Council recommend?" she asked, though she suspected the answer. "Quarantine," Zathiel replied immediately. "Complete isolation until we can better understand their nature." It was the sensible decision, the safe decision, the decision that every rational civilization in the confluence would make when faced with such an unknown quantity. It was also, Nithkari realized with growing dread, probably the wrong decision. 37 light-years away, Dr. Jennifer Cross stood in the control room of humanity's first interstellar communications array, watching signals that shouldn't exist paint patterns across her holographic displays. "We're definitely picking up artificial transmissions," she said to her team, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. "Multiple sources. Complex mathematical structures. This isn't random cosmic radiation." Her assistant, Dr. Raj Patel, leaned over the primary console, his eyes wide with excitement and terror in equal measure. "The patterns suggest at least a dozen different transmission protocols, different languages, different species." Jennifer had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. She had imagined it would be singular, momentous. A single signal from a single civilization that would change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. She had never imagined discovering evidence of an entire galactic community that had somehow failed to notice them. "How long have these signals been active?" she asked. Burbage consulted his instruments, running calculations that made his face grow pale. Based on the transmission decay rates and signal coherence, thousands of years, maybe longer. The implications hit Jennifer like a physical blow. Humanity had been sitting on a planet that was apparently within communication range of multiple alien civilizations for millennia, completely unaware of the vast community surrounding them. Either the aliens were extraordinarily good at concealment, or "They know about us," she whispered. "What?" "They know about us and they've been deliberately keeping us isolated." Raj opened his mouth to argue, then closed it as the same realization dawned on him. The mathematical precision of the signals they were detecting suggested technologies far beyond anything humanity possessed. Civilizations capable of such sophistication wouldn't accidentally overlook an entire planet within their communication range. Which meant humanity had been quarantined. "Should we respond?" Raj asked quietly. Jennifer stared at the flowing patterns of alien communication, each pulse representing thoughts and ideas from minds evolved under foreign stars. Every instinct she possessed as a scientist screamed that they should make contact, introduce themselves, join the galactic community that had been flowing around them like an ocean around an island. But another instinct, older, deeper, rooted in the same stubborn defiance that had carried humanity through ice ages and asteroid impacts and every other cosmic catastrophe their world had thrown at them, whispered something else entirely. "Not yet," she said. "First we learn everything we can about them." The decision would echo across the galaxy in ways neither human nor alien could predict. 3 months later, the first confluence monitoring station detected anomalous quantum fluctuations from the Sol system. The signals were crude, barely coherent, clearly the work of a species just beginning to experiment with faster-than-light communication. But they were also impossible to ignore. "They're trying to contact us," Zethalal reported to Nithkari, his voice carrying harmonic undertones of barely controlled panic. Nithkari remained silent, studying the intercepted human transmissions with growing unease. The messages themselves were simple. Mathematical progressions, prime number sequences, basic scientific constants, universal concepts that any spacefaring civilization would recognize. But the technology behind them was what terrified her. "How?" she asked finally. "We don't know. Their quantum field manipulation is unrefined, primitive, but it works. Somehow they've bypassed 3 fundamental technological prerequisites and gone straight to functional faster-than-light communication. It was like watching a species discover fire by splitting atoms. Technically impressive, scientifically impossible. Profoundly dangerous. They shouldn't be able to do this," Nithkari murmured. "No," Zethalal agreed. "They shouldn't. But they're doing it anyway." Which meant either the confluence's understanding of physics was fundamentally flawed, or humanity operated by different rules entirely. Neither possibility was comforting. "Recommendations?" Nithkari asked, though she dreaded the answer. "The council is divided. Half want to make contact immediately, establish diplomatic relations before they advance further. The other half want to increase quarantine protocols, possibly including active interference with their technological development. Nithkari felt her predator instincts screaming warnings that her conscious mind still couldn't fully process. Something about this situation felt catastrophically wrong, like standing on the edge of a cliff in the moments before an earthquake. And your personal recommendation? Zathalal was quiet for a long moment, his secondary eyes closed in the Velethan equivalent of deep thought. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics of genuine fear. I think we should be very, very careful not to make them angry. The statement hung in the air between them like a death sentence, because making first contact was no longer a question of if, but when. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy with the subtlety of a solar flare. Every monitoring station within 100 light-years had detected their transmissions. Within days, every major civilization in the confluence would know that the quarantined species from Sol had achieved faster-than-light communication. And they would all want to know what humanity intended to do with it. Dr. Jennifer Cross stood before the assembled representatives of United Earth Space Command, delivering the briefing that would change the course of human history. We've identified 47 distinct transmission sources, she said, her voice carrying across the packed auditorium. Each represents what we believe to be a separate alien civilization, based on signal strength and coherence patterns. Several of these civilizations possess technologies centuries or possibly millennia ahead of our own. Admiral Patricia Chen, no relation to the forbidden name, leaned forward in her seat. Are they hostile? Unknown. But here's what we do know. They've been aware of our existence for an undetermined period, and they've made no attempt to contact us until we demonstrated faster-than-light communication capability. A test, suggested General Harrison, his scarred face grim with understanding. They were waiting to see if we could reach the threshold. That's our assessment, Jennifer confirmed. But there's something else. Something that doesn't match any of our first contact protocols. She activated the holographic display showing a three-dimensional map of local space marked with transmission sources. Notice the distribution pattern. Every major star system within 70 light-years shows evidence of artificial transmissions. Every system The implication hung in the air as the assembled military and political leaders studied the map. Except ours, Admiral Chen finished quietly. We're surrounded, General Harrison observed. Completely surrounded by what appears to be an established galactic community. And we're the only species that wasn't included. The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Jennifer Cross had spent months preparing for this moment, running scenarios and analyzing data, but nothing had prepared her for the weight of delivering this particular truth to humanity's leaders. We were quarantined, she said simply. Admiral Chen stood slowly, her expression cycling through surprise, anger, and finally settling on something that looked remarkably like grim determination. For how long? Unknown. Based on signal archaeology, potentially thousands of years. Why? Also unknown. But we have theories. General Harrison's voice was dangerously quiet when he spoke. And those theories are? Jennifer activated another display showing comparative analyses of human technological development versus projected galactic norms. The difference was staggering. We developed too fast, she said. According to every mathematical model we can construct, human technological advancement follows patterns that are unprecedented. We skip intermediate steps, find shortcuts that shouldn't exist, achieve breakthroughs that other species require centuries to accomplish. And that's a problem? For them? Potentially. Most galactic civilizations appear to follow predictable development curves, steady, gradual advancement over millennia. We've achieved faster-than-light communication in roughly the same time span other species require to master basic metallurgy. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't been quarantined because they were primitive or dangerous. They had been quarantined because they were unpredictable. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying the data with the same analytical intensity that had made her one of Earth's most respected military leaders. When she spoke, her voice carried an edge that made everyone in the room suddenly very aware of why humanity had never been successfully conquered by any force, terrestrial or otherwise. How long before they realize we've broken quarantine? They already know, Jennifer replied. Our transmissions have been detected. We estimate first contact will occur within days, possibly hours. Their choice or ours? Unknown. Admiral Chen nodded slowly, and Dr. Jennifer Cross suddenly understood why the galaxy might have very good reasons to be afraid of humanity. "Then we make it ours," the Admiral said quietly. And in that moment, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted in ways that would take decades to fully understand. High Chancellor Netkari received the emergency transmission while reviewing quarterly trade agreements, her mind occupied with the mundane details of interspecies commerce. The priority signal interrupted her thoughts with the force of a physical blow. "What is it?" she asked. Zethel, though the harmonic undertones of his emergency communication had already told her everything she needed to know. "They've sent a message," he whispered. "The humans, they've sent a direct communication to the confluence." Netkari felt her blood turn to ice. What kind of message? A greeting, mathematical progressions, basic scientific constants. And Zethel paused, his voice carrying harmonic notes of genuine terror. A request for formal diplomatic recognition. The universe seemed to hold its breath. For 3,000 years, first contact protocols had been the exclusive domain of the galactic confluence. When a species achieved faster-than-light communication, the confluence made contact. The confluence established diplomatic relations. The confluence determined the terms of engagement. Humanity had just shattered 3 millennia of precedent by making first contact with them. How? Netkari asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. They figured out our primary communication frequency. Somehow, without any prior knowledge of our communication protocols, they identified the exact quantum signatures we use for official confluence business and sent their message directly to our diplomatic channels. It was impossible. Confluence communication protocols were based on quantum entanglement patterns that required decades of advanced study to understand. The mathematical principles involved were so complex that most species required centuries of technological development before they could even comprehend the basics. Humanity had reverse-engineered the system in less than 4 months. "Have you verified the transmission?" Lord Kare asked weakly. "Multiple times. It's authentic." And Chancellor Zephal's voice dropped to barely audible harmonics. "It's not just a greeting. They're requesting immediate diplomatic recognition, formal trade agreements, and cultural exchange protocols." The audacity was breathtaking. A species that had been quarantined for millennia, that had only achieved faster-than-light communication months ago, was demanding to be treated as equals by a galactic community that had existed for 3,000 years. It was presumptuous. It was unprecedented. It was probably exactly what Netkari should have expected from a species that treated natural disasters as recreational opportunities. "What does the Council recommend?" she asked, though she suspected the answer would be chaos. "The Council is divided. Emergency sessions have been called. Half the member species want immediate military quarantine protocols. The other half want to fast-track diplomatic recognition before humanity decides to take more direct action." Netkari closed all 6 eyes, feeling the weight of 3,000 years of galactic civilization pressing down on her shoulders. The decision she made in the next few hours would determine whether humanity joined the confluence as equals, or whether the galaxy faced its first major conflict in over a millennium. Both possibilities terrified her equally. "Schedule an emergency session," she said finally. "Full council. All member species." And Zethal, "Yes, Chancellor. Prepare the deep space monitoring stations for unusual activity." Because Netkari's predator instincts were screaming that humanity's polite diplomatic greeting was only the beginning, and she was about to discover just how right those instincts were. The emergency session of the Galactic Confluence Council had been called to order exactly 47 minutes after humanity's diplomatic transmission reached the primary communication hub. Representatives from every member species materialized in holographic splendor around the vast circular chamber, their various forms of life creating a symphony of colors, sounds, and electromagnetic signatures that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Today, it felt like a war council. High Chancellor Netkari stood at the center of the assemblage, her 6 eyes scanning the gathered representatives with the intensity of a predator evaluating threats. The Ilthrani delegation pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that indicated extreme agitation. The Morthak representative, A crystalline entity that communicated through harmonic resonance was generating frequencies so high they made nearby equipment malfunction. Even the normally placid Elfin had shifted their atmospheric containment to the deep blue patterns that signaled serious concern. "The issue before us is unprecedented," Nufkari began, her voice carrying across the chamber with carefully modulated harmonics that conveyed authority without aggression. "For the first time in Confluence history, a quarantined species has initiated first contact with us." Ambassador Crixton of the Yelthrani was the first to respond, his bioluminescent patterns flashing in rapid-fire sequences that translated to barely controlled panic. "This cannot be allowed. 3 millennia of protocol demand that we maintain quarantine until proper assessment is complete." "And how long might that take?" countered Representative O'Farr of the Elfin, their atmospheric form shifting to challenging orange patterns. "Centuries? Millennia? We cannot ignore a species that has demonstrated both technological capability and diplomatic awareness." The debate that followed would have been fascinating to xenoanthropologists, if any of them had been present to witness 47 different species arguing in 47 different ways about how to handle a 48th species that refused to follow their established rules. But Nufkari was focused on something else entirely. She was watching the tactical display that showed real-time monitoring data from the Sol system, and what she saw there made her blood run cold. "Council," she interrupted, her voice carrying harmonic overtones that demanded immediate attention. "We have a new development." The argument died instantly as every representative focused on the holographic display materializing above them. Earth hung in the center, surrounded by a cloud of small objects that definitely hadn't been there the last time they checked. "What are we looking at?" asked Ambassador Crexton. "According to our long-range sensors, the humans have launched approximately 200 artificial satellites in the last 72 hours, Nufkari replied, her voice carefully controlled. "Each satellite appears to be equipped with faster-than-light communication arrays." The silence that followed was deafening. Representative Alfawar was the first to speak, their atmospheric forms cycling through colors that indicated confusion and growing alarm. 200 satellites? In 72 hours? Our analysis suggests a coordinated global effort involving every major space-capable nation on their planet, Nufkari confirmed. They've gone from experimental faster-than-light communication to a planet-wide communication network in less than a week. The implications were staggering. Most species required decades to deploy even basic faster-than-light communication networks. The technological logistics alone should have taken years to coordinate. Humanity had done it in 3 days. "It gets worse," a Sithil whispered to Nufkari through private communication channels. "How could it possibly get worse? They're scanning us." Nufkari felt her predator instinct surge to full alert. "Explain." "The satellites aren't just communication arrays, they're sensor platforms. Extremely sophisticated ones. They're conducting detailed scans of every artificial object within 100 light-years. Which meant humanity wasn't just announcing their presence to the galaxy. They were conducting reconnaissance. They're mapping our entire local presence." Nufkari realized with growing horror. "Yes, and Chancellor, they're good at it. Really good. They've identified monitoring stations that some of our own member species weren't aware existed." The debate in the council chamber had devolved into chaos as various species argued over response protocols, quarantine measures, and diplomatic precedents. But Nufkari was no longer listening. Her attention was focused entirely on the tactical implications of what humanity had just accomplished. In less than a week, they had gone from isolated planet to galactic reconnaissance power. And they were just getting started. Dr. Jennifer Cross stood in the newly constructed Deep Space Communications Center, watching data streams that represented the culmination of humanity's greatest technological achievement. Around her, teams of scientists and engineers monitored the flood of information pouring in from their satellite network with expressions of awe and growing concern. "We've identified 63 artificial installations within scanning range," reported Dr. Yuki Tanaka, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were discovering. "Stations, platforms, what appear to be shipyards, and something else." "Define something else," Jennifer said, though she suspected she didn't want to know the answer. "Massive structures, bigger than anything we've ever imagined." One of them appears to be a space elevator that extends from a planet's surface to its outer moon. Another looks like it might be a partially dismantled asteroid. Jennifer stared at the holographic displays showing the alien installations scattered throughout local space. Each structure represented technologies that humanity could barely comprehend, engineering projects that dwarfed anything Earth had ever attempted. And they were everywhere. "How many civilizations are we looking at?" she asked. "Based on architectural patterns and technological signatures, at least 20 within our immediate scanning range, possibly more." The numbers were staggering. 20 different alien civilizations, all maintaining permanent installations within 100 light-years of Earth, all apparently coordinating their activities through some kind of galactic government or alliance, all of whom had known about humanity and chosen to ignore them. Until now, Dr. Cross, called Dr. Tanaka, her voice carrying an edge of excitement and terror, "We're receiving a response." Jennifer felt her heart skip a beat. "From who?" "Unknown, but it's coming through official channels, highly encrypted, and it's addressed to the representative government of Sol." The fact that they knew Earth's designation in what was apparently the galactic bureaucracy was both impressive and deeply unsettling. Jennifer activated the primary communication array, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. "Put it through." The message that materialized in the center of the communications array was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. It wasn't text or voice or video. It was pure information, somehow translated directly into concepts that the human mind could understand. "Greetings, Solar Soli 3. You are invited to participate in emergency diplomatic proceedings regarding your recent technological advancement and communication initiatives. Please designate a representative for immediate transport to Confluence Station Prime." Jennifer read the message twice, her mind struggling to process the implications. "They want to meet," Dr. Tanaka whispered. "No," Jennifer corrected, reading between the lines with the paranoia that had served humanity well throughout its history. "They want to interrogate us." The distinction was important. This wasn't a friendly invitation to join the galactic community. This was a summons to explain themselves before a tribunal of alien civilizations that had been watching them for millennia. "Are we going to respond?" Dr. Tanaka asked. Jennifer stared at the message, weighing options that could determine the future of humanity. Accept the invitation, and they would be walking into a situation completely controlled by aliens with unknown motivations. Decline, and they would likely face consequences that could range from renewed quarantine to open hostility. But there was a third option. "Yes," she said finally, "but not the way they expect." Because humanity had learned long ago that the best defense against overwhelming force was to be so unpredictable that your enemies couldn't plan for you. And Jennifer Cross was about to demonstrate that lesson on a galactic scale. The response that humanity sent to the galactic confluence 3 hours later would be studied by xenopolitical scientists for centuries. It was polite, it was respectful. It acknowledged the confluence's authority and expressed gratitude for the invitation, and it completely ignored every diplomatic protocol that had governed first contact for 3,000 years. Instead of designating a single representative, humanity proposed sending a delegation of 50 individuals representing every major nation's scientific discipline and cultural tradition on Earth. Instead of requesting transport to Confluence Station Prime, they offered to host the meeting on a neutral station that they would construct specifically for the purpose. Instead of submitting to interrogation about their technological advancement, they provided detailed technical specifications for their faster-than-light communication system and offered to share the technology with any Confluence member species that was interested. And instead of treating the meeting as a tribunal, they structured their response as a negotiation between equals. The audacity was breathtaking. High Chancellor Nithakari read the human response with growing disbelief, her 6 eyes scanning the document multiple times to ensure she wasn't misunderstanding something fundamental about their intent. "They want to host the meeting," she said to Zisao, her voice carrying harmonic undertones of stunned incredulity. "Yes, Chancellor. On a station they will build." "Yes, Chancellor." "In space." "Yes, Chancellor." "In 6 months." "Yes, Chancellor." Nithakari was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications of humanity's response. Every aspect of their proposal violated established diplomatic protocols, The presumption of equality was unprecedented. The offer to share technology was suspicious. The timeline was impossible, and the fact that they apparently believed they could construct a space station capable of hosting interspecies diplomatic negotiations in 6 months was either delusional or terrifying. "What does engineering analysis say about their construction timeline?" she asked. Zethal consulted his data feeds, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "Based on their current technological capabilities, impossible. Based on their demonstrated rate of advancement, potentially feasible." Which meant humanity was either making promises they couldn't keep, or they were about to demonstrate another technological leap that would further destabilize the galactic status quo. Recommendations? The Council is divided. Some members want to reject their proposal entirely and insist on standard protocols. Others believe that accepting might give us better intelligence on their true capabilities. Nithkari studied the human proposal again, her predator instincts screaming warnings about every aspect of the situation. Humanity was treating first contact like a business negotiation, approaching a 3,000-year-old galactic government as if they were equals, and apparently planning to demonstrate their technological capabilities on a scale that would be visible to every monitoring station in local space. It was exactly the kind of boldly aggressive behavior she should have expected from a species that had evolved on a planet that actively tried to kill them. "What's our assessment of their military capabilities?" she asked quietly. Zethalal's pause told her everything she needed to know. "Unknown, Chancellor. They have no space-based military assets that we can detect. But their planet's surface is covered with weapons systems that could theoretically be adapted for space combat. Nuclear arsenals, electromagnetic pulse generators, kinetic weapons platforms, and their industrial capacity appears to be extensive." Nithkari nodded slowly. Humanity might not have a space navy, but they had the technological foundation to build one quickly if they chose to. And given their demonstrated ability to exceed every projection about their development timeline, how quickly could they militarize space? She asked. Based on their current industrial capacity and rate of technological advancement? Months. Possibly weeks if they chose to prioritize military development over diplomatic initiatives. The calculation was as simple as it was terrifying. Humanity could go from zero space-based military presence to a significant threat in less time than it would take the confluence to organize a military response, which meant the galaxy was facing its first real strategic dilemma in over a millennium. How do you deal with a species that might become too dangerous to ignore, but is still too unknown to trust? "Send our response," Nithkari said finally. "Accept their proposal, Chancellor. If they can build a station capable of hosting interspecies negotiations in 6 months, we need to know about it. If they can't, well, at least we'll learn something about their limitations." But even as she gave the order, Nithkari's predator instincts were telling her that humanity's limitations were probably not going to be the problem. Their capabilities were. 6 months later, the galaxy discovered that humanity's promises weren't delusions. They were understatements. The station that humanity constructed in 6 months was impossible. High Chancellor Nithkar sighed at the massive structure through the observation deck of her diplomatic transport, her 6 eyes struggling to process what she was seeing. The station wasn't just large, it was elegant, symmetrical, beautiful in ways that suggested an understanding of engineering principles that the confluence had spent millennia developing. And it was rotating. "They built a gravity generation system," breathed Zethal, his harmonic undertones carrying frequencies that indicated barely controlled awe. "A functional, stable gravity generation system." Nithkari nodded slowly, her predator instincts screaming warnings about every aspect of what they were approaching. Artificial gravity wasn't impossible. Several confluence species had mastered the technology, but it typically required decades of research and construction, massive energy expenditures, and technological foundations that humanity supposedly didn't possess. "How?" she asked, though she was beginning to suspect that how was the wrong question when dealing with humans. "Unknown? Our preliminary scans suggest they're using a combination of rotational dynamics and something else. Something we can't identify." The something else was what terrified her. Humanity had invited 47 alien civilizations to a diplomatic meeting on a space station that shouldn't exist. using technologies that shouldn't work, built in a time frame that shouldn't be possible. And they had done it all while maintaining the polite fiction that they were simply eager to join the galactic community. "Incoming transmission," announced the ship's communication officer, a young Vilithan whose harmonic patterns indicated nervous excitement. "Put it through," Nathkari ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was distinctly human, warm, confident, carrying undertones of welcome that were probably genuine and definitely calculated. "This is Station Commander Diana Zhang of the Seoul Diplomatic Platform. High Chancellor Nathkari, you are cleared for Docking Bay 7. Please follow the approach vectors we're transmitting. And welcome to humanity's first diplomatic station." The casual competence in the human's voice was almost as unsettling as the station itself. This wasn't a species struggling to master new technologies. This was a species that had mastered new technologies and was now eager to show them off. "Acknowledged, Station Commander," Nathkari replied, managing to keep her voice steady. "We appreciate your hospitality." "Our pleasure, Chancellor. We're looking forward to finally meeting our neighbors." The transmission ended, leaving Nathkari alone with her growing certainty that the galaxy was about to change in ways none of them were prepared for. Station Commander Diana Zhang stood in the primary docking bay, watching the last of the alien diplomatic transports settle into their assigned berths with satisfaction that she carefully kept hidden. Around her, teams of human technicians and engineers moved with practiced efficiency, ensuring that every arriving delegation had access to appropriate atmospheric conditions, gravity settings, and communication interfaces. The logistics of hosting 47 different alien species simultaneously had been staggering. Each species required different environmental conditions, different biochemical accommodations, different technological interfaces. Most galactic civilizations required years to prepare for such complex diplomatic gatherings. Humanity had done it in 6 months, and they had done it while secretly implementing technologies that none of their guests suspected. "All delegations secured," reported her aide, Lieutenant Commander Raj Patel. No relation to the earlier Dr. Patel. "Environmental systems are stable. Translation protocols are functioning within acceptable parameters." "Good," Diana replied, her eyes scanning the status displays that showed every aspect of the station's operations. "Any unexpected readings?" "Nothing significant. A few of the delegations are conducting passive scans, but nothing aggressive. They seem cautious." Diana nodded. Caution was appropriate. If the alien delegates had any idea what humanity had actually built into this station, caution would quickly escalate to terror, but they wouldn't discover the truth until it was too late to matter. "Initiate Phase 1, she ordered quietly. Around them, hidden systems throughout the station began their silent activation sequences. The diplomatic assembly hall was a masterpiece of human engineering disguised as simple pragmatism. Representatives from 47 alien civilizations arranged themselves in their preferred atmospheric configurations around a central presentation area, their various forms creating a symphony of diversity that would have been inspiring under different circumstances. Today it felt like the calm before a storm. High Chancellor Nathkari took her position at the primary speaking podium, her 6 eyes scanning the assembled delegates with growing unease. Something about this gathering felt wrong. Not in any way she could identify, but in the deep, instinctive way that had kept her species alive through millions of years of evolution. The humans were too confident, too prepared, too eager to please, and their technology was too advanced. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice carrying across the hall through translation systems that were working far better than they had any right to. "We gather today to address the unprecedented situation presented by humanity's recent technological advancement and their request for formal recognition within the galactic confluence." Murmurs of agreement and concern rippled through the assembled delegates, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sound, light, and electromagnetic irradiation that the station's systems handled without apparent strain. "The primary concerns before us are straightforward," Nathkari continued. "First, humanity's rate of technological development exceeds all known parameters for species evolution. Second, their approach to first contact has violated 3 millennia of established protocols. Third, their demonstrated capabilities suggest potential destabilization of existing galactic power structures." She paused, allowing the implications to settle among the assembled delegates before continuing. The question we must answer is simple. Can humanity be integrated into the galactic confluence without threatening the stability that has maintained peace for 3,000 years? The debate that followed was predictable. The conservative species argued for continued quarantine. The progressive species advocated for immediate integration. The military powers discussed threat assessment. The trade federations calculated economic implications. And through it all, the human delegation sat quietly, listening, observing, waiting. Ambassador Jennifer Cross, now serving as Earth's primary diplomatic representative, watched the alien debate with the patience of a species that had learned to survive by understanding their enemies better than their enemies understood themselves. "They're afraid," she murmured to her aide, Dr. David Kim, through private communication channels. "Of us, of change. They've had 3,000 years of stability. The idea that a single species could disrupt that terrifies them." Dr. Kim studied the assembled alien delegates, noting the patterns of their arguments, the alliances forming and dissolving as different species weighed their options. "So, what do we do?" Jennifer smiled, expression that would have terrified any human who truly understood what it meant. "We show them what they should really be afraid of." The moment came 3 hours into the debate, when Ambassador Crexthen of the Ilthrani stood to deliver what was clearly intended as the definitive argument against human integration. "The species from Sol 3 represents an unacceptable destabilization risk," he declared, his bioluminescent patterns flashing in sequences that translated to absolute conviction. "Their technological development follows no known patterns. Their diplomatic approach ignores established protocols. Their very existence threatens the careful balance that has maintained galactic peace for millennia." He paused dramatically, his patterns shifting to what Jennifer recognized as the Ylthrani equivalent of righteous indignation. "We cannot allow a single unpredictable species to endanger the prosperity and security of 47 civilizations. I propose immediate implementation of enhanced quarantine protocols, including active technological suppression if necessary." The silence that followed was deafening. Enhanced quarantine protocols weren't just isolation, they were active suppression of a species' technological development through whatever means necessary, including, if required, military intervention. It was, essentially, a declaration of war disguised as diplomatic procedure. Ambassador Jennifer Cross stood slowly, her movement carrying the fluid grace that humans developed when they learned to navigate environments that could kill them without warning. Around her, her delegation remained seated, but their posture shifted in ways that indicated readiness for violence. "Ambassador Crexthen," she said, her voice carrying across the hall with perfectly controlled calm. "Thank you for that illuminating perspective on humanity's place in the galactic community." She activated her presentation system, and holographic displays materialized throughout the assembly hall. What they showed made every alien delegate suddenly very aware of how far from home they were. "Before we discuss enhanced quarantine protocols," Jennifer continued, her voice remaining perfectly pleasant, "perhaps we should discuss why such protocols might be inadvisable." The first display showed Sol's star system in exquisite detail, but it wasn't the same system the Confluence had been monitoring for millennia. "As you can see, humanity has been somewhat busier than our previous communications indicated." The star system was filled with activity, mining operations on a dozen asteroids, manufacturing platforms in the outer planets' orbits, a massive construction project near Jupiter that defied immediate classification. But those weren't what made the alien delegates begin to understand the magnitude of their miscalculation. "These structures," Jennifer continued, highlighting a network of installations positioned throughout the system, "represent humanity's primary defensive infrastructure. Advanced early warning systems, automated weapon platforms, and what we call kinetic interdiction networks." The displays zoomed in to show the installations in detail. Weapon systems that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Energy arrays that could generate focused electromagnetic pulses capable of disabling starships at interplanetary distances. And most terrifying of all, manufacturing systems that appeared to be producing more weapons platforms in real time. "How long?" whispered High Chancellor Nuthakari, her voice barely audible through the translation systems. How long have we been building these systems? Jennifer asked pleasantly. Since approximately 6 hours after we decoded your first transmission. Humanity has a saying, Chancellor. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. The implications were staggering. While engaging in diplomatic negotiations, humanity had simultaneously militarized their entire star system. But Jennifer wasn't finished. Of course, defensive systems are only part of the equation, she continued, activating the next series of displays. Offensive capabilities require a different approach entirely. What appeared on the screens made several alien delegates physically recoil in terror. Project Ragnarok, Jennifer announced calmly. Humanity's contingency plan for dealing with hostile galactic civilizations. The displays showed weapons systems that violated every known principle of civilized warfare. Kinetic bombardment platforms capable of accelerating asteroid-sized projectiles to near light speed. Biological warfare systems designed to target specific alien biochemistries. And most horrifying of all, something labeled as stellar engineering applications. Stellar engineering? Asked Representative Althor, their atmospheric forms cycling through colors that indicated barely controlled panic. Yes, Jennifer replied cheerfully. We've developed a theoretical framework for weaponizing stars themselves. Induced solar flares, gravitational manipulation, that sort of thing. Very much a last resort option, you understand. The assembly hall had gone completely silent. But of course, Jennifer continued, none of that compares to our primary deterrent system. She activated the final display, and every alien delegate in the hall suddenly understood why humanity had been so confident, so accommodating, so eager to host this meeting. The display showed Sol's star itself, surrounded by a network of installations that formed a barely visible sphere around the entire solar system. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished entities, Jennifer announced with perfect diplomatic courtesy, allow me to present the Dyson Sphere Protocol. High Chancellor Neithkari stared at the display in horror that transcended species barriers. A Dyson Sphere was theoretical, a megastructure that surrounded an entire star capable of harvesting its complete energy output. Most civilizations considered it a theoretical exercise, something that might be possible with millions of years of technological development. Humanity had built one in 6 months. Not a complete sphere, obviously, Jennifer continued conversationally. More of a selective energy collection and redirection system, but the principle remains the same. Total energy capture from our star, with the ability to focus that energy in any direction we choose. The weapon implications were terrifying. A civilization that could harness the complete energy output of a star could sterilize planets from hundreds of light-years away. They could disrupt FTL communication across entire sectors. They could, if they chose, destabilize other stars. How? Whispered Zathal, his harmonic undertones carrying frequencies of absolute terror. Trade secret, Jennifer replied with a smile that was probably meant to be reassuring and absolutely wasn't. But I will say that self-replicating construction systems make the whole process much more efficient than traditional approaches. Self-replicating systems. Humanity hadn't just built a Dyson sphere. They had built self-replicating systems capable of building Dyson spheres. The implications for galactic security were beyond catastrophic. Now, Jennifer continued, her voice returning to perfectly pleasant diplomatic tones, shall we discuss enhanced quarantine protocols? Because I have to say, from humanity's perspective, they seem somewhat counterproductive. Ambassador Crix then was making sounds that the translation system couldn't process, probably because the Ilthrani language had no words for the concept of a species that could weaponize stars. Of course, Jennifer added helpfully, humanity remains committed to peaceful integration with the galactic community. We're not interested in conquest or domination. We simply want to take our place as equals among the stars. She paused, allowing that statement to settle among the assembled delegates before delivering the line that would echo through galactic history. But we also want to ensure that everyone understands the consequences of trying to suppress or control us. The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, High Chancellor Neithkari found her voice. What are humanity's terms for peaceful integration? Jennifer Cross smiled again, and this time there was nothing reassuring about it at all. full membership in the Galactic Confluence, equal voting rights, free access to all trade networks and technological exchanges, and a mutual defense treaty guaranteeing that no member species will face enhanced quarantine protocols without unanimous consent of the full Council. The demands were unprecedented. Humanity was asking for complete equality with civilizations that had been spacefaring for millennia, plus protection for any future species that might follow their example. And if the Confluence rejects these terms? Asked Representative Ulf. Jennifer's expression didn't change, but somehow her smile became infinitely more dangerous. Then humanity will pursue its own path among the stars, and will be happy to discuss mutual cooperation with any species that's interested in alternative arrangements. The threat was implicit, but unmistakable. If the Confluence rejected humanity, humanity would begin building its own galactic alliance. And given their demonstrated technological capabilities, that alliance would quickly become the dominant power in local space. "How long do we have to consider your proposal?" asked Nathakari. "Oh, there's no rush," Jennifer replied pleasantly. "Take all the time you need. Of course, I should mention that humanity has already begun expanding our defensive perimeter beyond the Sol system. We've identified several uninhabited star systems that would be suitable for development. I'm sure the Confluence wouldn't object to humanity claiming a few systems that nobody else is using," which meant humanity was preparing to expand regardless of the Confluence's decision. They were simply offering the galaxy a choice: accept humanity as equals, or face them as competitors. The vote that followed was unanimous. Not because the alien delegates wanted to accept humanity's terms, but because they were terrified of what would happen if they didn't. 3 months later, humanity was formally inducted as the 48th member species of the Galactic Confluence, with full voting rights, complete access to galactic trade networks, and a mutual defense treaty that would protect future developing species from enhanced quarantine protocols. The ceremony was held on Earth at humanity's request, and every alien delegate who attended noticed the massive construction projects visible in Earth's orbital space, projects that suggested humanity's technological development was accelerating rather than stabilizing. High Chancellor Nithkari stood on the observation deck of the newest human space station, watching Earth turn slowly beneath them, while considering the implications of what humanity had accomplished. They had gone from quarantined isolation to galactic superpower in less than a year. They had revolutionized interstellar diplomacy by making it clear that technological superiority trumped ancient protocols. And they had done it all while maintaining the polite fiction that they simply wanted to be good neighbors. "Regrets, Chancellor?" asked Zethalal. Nithkari considered the question carefully. Humanity's integration into the Galactic Confluence had indeed destabilized 3,000 years of careful balance. Trade networks were reorganizing around human technologies. Diplomatic alliances were shifting to accommodate humanity's influence. Several species were already requesting human assistance with their own technological development. The galaxy was changing, rapidly and unpredictably. But it was also becoming more vibrant, more dynamic, more alive than it had been in millennia. "No," she said finally. "No regrets. But I do have one question." "What's that?" "How much of their capabilities do you think they actually showed us?" Zethalal was quiet for a long moment, studying the human construction projects visible in the distance. Based on their development patterns, probably less than 10%. Nithkari nodded slowly. She had reached the same conclusion. Humanity hadn't demonstrated their full capabilities to intimidate the Galactic Confluence. They had demonstrated just enough to ensure they would be taken seriously as equals. The rest of their capabilities remained hidden, waiting for whatever challenges the galaxy might present in the future. And despite herself, Nithkari found that thought oddly comforting. Because after 3,000 years of careful stability, the galaxy finally had a species capable of dealing with whatever came next, even if nobody knew what next might bring. As Earth continued its rotation beneath them, carrying humanity forward into an uncertain but undoubtedly interesting future, High Chancellor Nithkari allowed herself a small smile. The universe had a way of humbling civilizations that thought they understood it. But sometimes, just sometimes, it also rewarded the ones bold enough to surprise it. And humanity, she suspected, was just getting started.